Honestly, true story. I think a lot of life can be learned by watching.
Welcome back, Ordinary Freaks, here with another episode. Be here with our co-host Eddie, and today we have the pleasure of having AB, an advocate for personal development, leadership.
Yes.
So good.
Founder of the Leading Third Movement. AB, welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, bro. Seriously, you guys are so cool. Couldn't be more blessed by being able to come on and share a voice. So thanks, bro.
Of course, man. We've chatted before, and we love your energy and your hype, and you get us excited and ready to go. So thanks
for all about that passion.
So thanks for showing up. We're gonna start off. Tell us about your early childhood. Your circumstances coming up, and how did it all play to the person you're kind of developing into now?
Yeah, totally. Grew up in Milwaukee. Shout out to 414. Love it. Love this city. So I grew up in Milwaukee, 97th and Lisbon. Grew up with 5 kids, middle kid of 5. They would say it's sometimes the forgotten child. But I loved it. My family's crazy in the best ways. My dad is probably the most hardworking man I know. He's just kills it, still works. He's like 56, still going hard.
Still hustling every day.
He's actually mailman, and we did the math, and he's actually walked around the earth 8 times.
Dude, that's crazy.
So that's crazy. Mom is also super hardworking. I think I get a lot of my attributes from my family. We're just super personal people. So I grew up with 5 kids. I would say also when you're the middle kid, you're kind of like have a less of a voice, I would say. I struggled a lot with feeling like my input or my ideas or my thoughts or my jokes were like even important. But it also like grew me, I think, so much as like the person I am today. When something's not celebrated, I think you have the opportunity to lean into how to be celebrated, or like how to learn or how to grow. And so I think for a lot of my life, what I did growing up is because I didn't have a voice, sometimes I would shut down and just purposely like watch.
So where does, this new AB come in, like leadership? So all these struggles, at some point you hit a low point.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that, and then how does that help make you and evolve to the person you are now, and the knowledge you have when it comes to leadership and just becoming a better person in general?
Yeah, totally. So around 23 was like the worst year of my life. So like it was like back to back to back. I was actually dating this girl for, it was like 4 years almost.
High school sweetheart, or?
So we met right after. Well, I knew her for like since grade school and through high school, but we started dating like after senior year of high school. And to be honest, I when you date someone for like 4 years, it was like 4 years, a couple months, like you just put so much of, I would say I put my identity around the relationship. In other words, if the relationship was healthy, I was healthy. Like if the relationship wasn't healthy, then like I was unhealthy. And my family knew this too, like, and I just put so much time into this relationship that I wrapped my mind and my heart in it. So I was dating this girl for 4 years. I flipped my car. Actually, I almost died in a car accident. I was super involved in football, so I couldn't play with that happening. And then like back to back, my 2 aunts passed away. So we had these things as like a family get together, as like for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and we call them like birthday blessings, or like being thankful for a person in your family. And we would just sit in a circle, and like my aunt started this thing, my Aunt Jan. And so we would just talk about like our family members, and like true story, I would Man, I like couldn't even get out a couple of words without like just
Yeah,
breaking
of
down and
course.
crying, you know? And like my family would make fun of me for it. I think that's why I don't break down and cry as easily. But, um, you know, like that was like our family element. So it was like, hey, we want to like empower you and encourage you. And I think even to that, that's why I love leadership, because I think leadership is all about empowering others to be the best them, you know? And that's a life lesson I learned from my Aunt Jan. And so she got ovarian cancer, and like within 3 months, she like passed away. And then my other aunt, so I grew up with a handicapped aunt. And, you know, a lot of people, when you grow up, you're on Sundays hanging out with your boys, etc. Well, I would drive out with my family to Bethesda in Watertown. You know, it was a huge facility with people that had disabilities and whatnot. And I would spend time there. So I think I view life as such a gift. Life is such an incredible gift, you know? And 2 weeks after my aunt passed away, my Aunt Lori like passed away. And it was like right around Christmas time.
Crazy.
And it was like wrecked me. And then shortly after that, my ex-girlfriend and I, like, we broke up. Had a really rough breakup, I would say, for me. As a result of all these things happening in a short amount of time, I actually failed out of nursing school. So when that happened, I literally hit my lowest of lows. Struggled with depression for like 2 years, suicidal thoughts. I went from working out all the time, Class A athlete, to literally weighing like 120, 125, like super skinny, just would go to work, come home, stay in my bed. My mom would like cry with me sometimes. She would be like, you know, her mom's like hurting for you. And I honestly, like, I couldn't come out of this pit. I couldn't come out of this like pit of just having no purpose. Like I would see all my friends graduating, all my friends getting married, all this, all that. And here I am like $50,000 in loan with no degree, with no identity. True story. I would try to hang out with guys or whatever, and I couldn't crack a joke. I couldn't relate. My whole life was wrapped up in this girl, you know? So when that broke, I was like, God, like, you know, like you say you're real, like you say you're good, but I'm like doubting right now if you are even real. And true story, it got to a place of where I actually denied that there was a God. Like there was no way in my mind that God was real, or if he's good. I was like, there's no way God can let these things happen. You know? And so I struggled big time with thinking that there was a God. And shortly after, I like moved down to South Carolina and met some incredible people. And true story, like I grew up in the church. So I grew up in the church, grew up in the church, grew up in the church. But the church isn't, the church is like a thing we get to go to. I think a lot of people associate church with religion. But I think Jesus wants a relationship. And so I was going for church all the time. I wasn't going for a relationship. And it was such a foreign concept to me. And so when I moved down to South Carolina, I met some amazing people that like loved me like Jesus, like loved me like a person that was broken, and met some incredible mentors, you know, that just loved me for me. And I was in church this one time, and I'm like worshiping God, not because I believed there was a God, but I wanted to get to this place of people all around the world worship Jesus. Like I wanted God to like, you know, show me that he was real. And like I got wrecked. Like I was bawling. I was on this pew, like on my knees, like with tears like running down my face. And just because of all the pain I was experiencing at the time, and like no identity. And my pastor was actually talking about like we were doing a mosaics like sermon series. Masterpiece sermon series, and in the Bible it talks about Ephesians 2:10 that you're God's masterpiece created in Christ Jesus for a purpose. So that's like my life verse now, man, is that you're created for a purpose. I think so many of us as people, we think, you know, being an architect is our purpose, like being an engineer is our purpose, you know, all these things are our purpose. So I struggled with depression, suicide, but God like gave me purpose and pain, purpose for my pain. And so that's why Ephesians 2:10 is like my life verse now, man. Is I always feel like now I have a purpose in this life because, when I was at my lowest, God pulled me out of this pit. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
But I needed hope, and I think that God is a God of Hebrews 6:19, man. He's an anchor of hope for us in times of need.
Yeah. Do you think? Because personally, I've also felt that I've gone to very lows in my life where I really want to just do like I'm always thinking extremes, right? I think that's when you get to a point of it's either high stress and or high anxiety, where like you're thinking, polar opposites, where like it could be really good or it could be really, really bad. How do you, obviously you just explain how you get out of it. Do you think being removed, obviously your brother pulling you out and kind of taking you somewhere else, do you think being removed from, what was happening here, did that help in a sense? Or do you think that it got to a point where like it was just meant to be for you to be there?
Yeah. Oh, well, God says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, to give you a hope in a future. And so I'm not an advocate of running from your pain. I'm not an advocate of just taking the easy road out. I think the tallest buildings endure the hardest winds. And so you as a person, as a leader in this society, you have to, I would say it's a perspective thing. It's a hard thing. So you have to take a rocket ship off planet Earth for a second and see your life as like from the moon, like from a huge perspective, And so I think so many people are so focused on the trial and the testing and the pain and the hardship that they're not focused on learning.
Yeah.
They're not focused on what I can learn from this or how I can grow in my leadership or my capacity to lead others by taking really observation of what you've been handed. So, dude, I'm so thankful that I moved. Like, beyond thankful. That was a season in my life that was critical, that was crucial to who I am now. Shout out to Bo Ayers, Chris Armfield, Janelle, my sister, Ryan, Joe Hyman, Caleb Massey, all these guys that were like David Brady, people in my life that I could just be Aaron Barnett, be me and like get loved by me. And there's countless people, Brandon Shell, all these people in Resonate, the Resonate community, people that would take years to name all the names of different people that played
a role,
like a purpose card in my life during that time. Small groups during Resonate. Resonate was like a community of people where we would just go, we'd pack a place out of like 300 plus young adults, people like just worshiping God, man. It was like incredible. So I wouldn't say that you should run, but you should take a hard look.
Yeah.
You gotta take a perspective card. You gotta take like how can I like channel this? It's farming season up in Wisconsin right now. True story, I think that every season in our life can be planting, harvesting, and watering. So I think farmers, it's like pre-planting. So they're getting everything ready for like the planting season. In our lives, I think we can actually be people that farm consistently. Farm our trial, farm our stage of just HE double hockey sticks, man. Like farm that, like channel it, use it. Because I think when you use your like pain, it can build to this purpose card. Dude, there's so many conversations I've had with people about depression, suicidal thoughts, pain, using pain as your purpose, that it's like literally beyond me. I didn't know in the moment that it was going to be purposeful, but now I'm like, dude, like God used this in my life to give other people hope.
Yeah.
I think our story wasn't made for us, it's made for others. True story. So I think, no, man, I wouldn't say to run from it, but I would say lean into it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think you basically hit on self-awareness. Like,
Yeah.
really look at your life, or if you can't look at your life, ask somebody, right? Like, I'll ask Pete, like, what am I doing wrong? And he will tell me bluntly, because I know I can take it, and even if you can't take it, like, it's the truth. So definitely, try to cope with it.
Right.
And then if you don't really like it, then change, that change needs to be done. So
Yeah. So
I like
you
that you
just
said that.
You just mentioned like a huge thing, like self-development. What would you guys say is like key for self-development, real quick? Just any thoughts come to the top of your head?
I'll say tenacity.
Tenacity,
I would say patience.
patience. So good. So self-development is so key, but without self-awareness, I think it's like
Yeah.
impossible to have self-development.
Yeah, I agree.
So you have to have like two things. You have to have an attitude of, well, I want to grow, but you have to have an attitude of self-awareness. I think, you brought up like letting people speak into your life. I think all of us have blind spots. So we all have lids. We have lids of leadership. Every person is like category as a lid. Like you have a lid of influence on your life. So some people may be able to jive with 5 people, and there's nothing wrong with that. You may be able to leave 5 people. And then there's leaders out there, we know, CEOs of companies, big organizations, Brian Houston, all these people that, lead great things, and their lid is like, 200,000,
Massive,
sometimes,
yeah.
50,000 people, I think I love leadership, is also sacrifice. You have to learn how to like sacrifice. So we live in a perfectionist society, literally. We see everyone's highlight reel on Instagram. We see our non-highlight reel on Instagram. We see everyone's edited photos with ours like that we don't even know how to edit, And so we live in this society of just perfection. And what it does, it limits us to take a step. So like Michelangelo, he was like the greatest painter, right? He was like such a savage. He was amazing, right? But he didn't become the best painter by not taking a stroke. He had to learn the art of start. So you had to learn, hey, I got to take a brush and I got to take a stroke. Why? Because after he took a stroke, he found out his purpose. He found out that his purpose was the thing that he's will be or would be amazing at. But he never would have found that if he didn't take a stroke.
Right.
And so because we live in a society of perfectionism and perfect and keeping our highlight reels the highlight reels, we can't even embrace, I think, as people, small beginnings.
So where did you learn leadership?
True story. I was purposed into it.
Okay.
I was leading down in a ministry down south a little bit, and I was in this leadership role. Loved it. It was like mentoring kids and all this stuff. And this one time, I was like reading this book, high level book. If you want to read something good, 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. So I was reading through this book, and I was discovering stuff like things I've never thought about in my lifetime. Analogies that were like blowing my mind. And I was purposed into it because I actually, I kind of got let go of a position at the time that I was working. And this one person said that I would never build anything in my lifetime, that you will not be a builder. And he sat a childhood puzzle piece in front of me, and he was like, this person is 1. He's like, I'm number 4, and like you're a 9. And he's like, took this 9 out, and he's like, you're a number 9. That's why I'm gonna write this book called I'm Number 9. Because like sometimes you have to lead last. No one's perfect. Everyone's in a journey, and I think we have to take personal ownership for everything. What we do in our society is we cast blame. We say, well, this didn't go right, or that didn't go right, or this person gave me a critical spirit, so because they gave me a critical spirit, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
And we immediately retreat as like a turtle into its shell But I think ultimately God wants us to like come out of the shell, like break our shell, come out and like turn that turtle into a hare sometimes and like run after, just because one opinion says is a critic or is a downgrading what your purpose is, doesn't mean they're the loudest, you know? Just because one critic talks about something doesn't mean that it's the loudest voice. But what happens is we hear the one critic and we ultimately retreat. We say, oh, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe this won't bridge, or maybe this won't launch, and then we just say, I'm just gonna try something different. And so we have our society of trying to lean into something, start something, and then we fail at it, and then we say, well, I guess it's not meant to be.
Yeah.
Just like you guys, you launched this podcast, but because you had to go through different things and different stretching points, and how to edit, how to change, how to audio, like all these things that maybe your first couple of them were like botches, and you're like, man, this is like harder than I thought it was going to be. But because you perfected it, you farmed it, you channeled it, you tried again, ultimately one day you guys are going to look back on your first videos with people and be like, dude, like, remember when? Like, remember when we were this little? Like, remember when our company was this small? Or like, and we just started with interviews? Now it's like this massive thing. Why? Because consistency always trumps failure. And so we have to be people that are consistent, focused, pinpointed excellence on everything we do and everything we say. Easier said than done, but I think when we channel everything that we've been given and dismiss the critics because just they're the loudest voices in our mind or in our scene, doesn't mean they're the most. So
for me, learning is key too. I wanted to touch on books and the power of books. You mentioned it a couple of times. It was something that I wanted to talk to you about. What do they play in your life, and maybe you can talk about your top 3 favorite books that you've read so far. And you mentioned wanting to write a book, and not just one. I think in the past you mentioned to us, several books. Can you touch on that as well?
Yeah. Man, that's such a loaded question. But I love reading. When I was talking, I lead a C group of guys, and we were talking about passions. And sometimes like our consistency in life is like all these things are going on, but we're like failing at everything. Because we're failing at everything, we feel like we're not succeeding in something. We're like, but we're putting all our hands to all these good things, but we're not doing, we have to have space to like do things well, right?
Yeah.
So I was talking to my C group yesterday about having your purpose and like the thing that you love. In other words, when I found leadership and reading and how it stretches my mind and grows me and my like heart, I love personal development. Like I love books that are going to go straight to the heart. Why? Because God says like the heart is deceitful, desperately wicked. Who can know it? So I think if we grow our heart to channel towards love, channel towards hope, channel towards compassion, empowerment, and we read books on God, like sowing good seed in our heart, I think we reproduce something beautiful. And so I'm a guy that would say, loves learning books, so reading books. Top books, 21 Laws of Leadership is a great one. Humble, Hungry, Hustle by Brad Lomenick is fire. Chasing the Lion by Mark Batterson. Man, I could talk for so long
on books.
Yeah, I got lists upon lists. I think I have an Evernote of like 166 books that I currently want to read right now. But yeah, I love books, man. I think when I sit down and read a book, I've come to this place of not thinking it's a book anymore. So I literally think the person that wrote the book is at the table because this person sat down in their own time to write this book. I need to honor them and their time that they gave So like I can't just read a book to check it off my list. I have to read to learn, like read to apply. If you don't apply, what's the point of reading?
Right.
True story. You're wasting your time.
Yep.
Just because you read a book doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
If you actively try to apply a lesson or remember the book that you read, I think you're going to see your influence grow. Why do I say that? Is because language is so key. How you speak is amazing,
Yep.
right? It's like your intelligence. I think so many people don't want to talk about intelligence because we don't want to step on toes of people. But we all know that we're not the sharpest tool in the shed, right? So get in a book. Like start reading. Like get in God's word. Start reading his word and watch God like renew your mind, renew your heart to like something that is profound. Where you can live out Ephesians 2:10, that you're God's masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus for a purpose.
What do you have to say for people that say don't have time to read?
It could go back to dating. A lot of people will be like, well, I don't have time, or whatever. But I think you put time where you feel is going to bring the most value in return. So people that say that time is an excuse don't know how to manage their time. And there's seasons for everything, right? There are seasons that you're extremely busy. There are seasons where you're absolutely doing nothing and you're not doing anything to like grow.
Yeah.
You have to find your passion. Until you find your passion, you will never desire learning. So I love God. I love reading about him. I invest a ton of my time into understanding the heart of my God, and I also invest a ton of my time in personal development. Why? Because when you link those two things, I think you become the hands and feet of Jesus, and you can actually move this world to a place of what God wants. Is like a place of love and hope, a place of that God is like the true thing that our soul desires. Because we were talking about this when I first met you, that even if you got to a place of becoming a CEO or having this or having that or having this, and say like, name what is successful for you right now while you're watching, name it right now. Let's say you get to that. Are you going to be happy? No. Why? Because this world doesn't provide happiness, I think. I think God gives us happiness. He gives us ultimate joy. So I would say that's like something I've learned, yeah. But
It's interesting you say that too, because listening like to J. Cole, like that's something he stresses a lot. He's like, I got the fame, I got the money, I got all this, and he was like,
entitlements.
Yeah, and he was like, and I still
accolades.
didn't feel happy, didn't feel, I wasn't doing what I was supposed to until he found his true calling. Then he, everything kind of came in place for him and came together. So I think you've been hearing that a lot more and more. And I think at a point in society, it was kind of frowned upon to talk about that, talk about God or whatever your passion might be, or your spiritualism. But now I think you see much more, when it comes to whoever it might be, but now more in the mainstream, you'll see people, talk about their spirituality and how that's helped them and how that gives them more purpose than, money or whatever, girls, success, whatever it might be, cars, So, it's interesting you said that, because I've definitely seen more of it coming about now. When we talked before, you mentioned you were kind of going through a rebranding phase. So what do you want, people, what do you want the Ordinary Freaks to know you for? What is your plan moving forward, and kind of what are the things you're working on?
Yeah, totally. I would say I'm working on a lot. Working how to be humble, for one. Learning how to feel that there is a calling and a purpose in my life and my soul, but being okay with not having a yes yet, right? And that takes a humble card. So I'm working through that, but ultimately I think on the sidelines, the behind the scenes, like the stuff that you don't Instagram, the stuff that you don't put out, I think that's so sacred. And for me, behind the scenes, now it's about to be like on the scenes.
On the
but
scene, everywhere.
yeah, man, I'm launching this thing called Leading Third. So basically, I think the joy of the Lord is our strength. And basically, there's a song that I sang as a kid called Jesus and Others and You. So when you keep those priorities in that order, Jesus first, others second, yourself last, it creates humility, but it also is a thing that is everyone does. Everyone, I think, I would say, not everyone. I would say people that believe in my faith specifically, that keep Jesus first, others second, and yourself last in that order. I would say you are the most strength-finding leader there is, because you learned that, you learn behind the scenes. You learn how to be mentored, how to be coached, how to be taught. And there will be a point of influence for your life. And so I'm working on Leading Third. It's going to basically be an organization where I interview high-level leaders eventually one day, hopefully just like this, sit down with them, grab coffee, talk about what joy has done in your life. Jesus first, others second, yourself last. But it's also understanding that just because you're the highest level leader doesn't mean you know everything.
Yeah.
Everyone is a gift to this race. People's perspectives are a gift. I think what we do is we highlight all these people and give all this cred to all these big name people, all the people with the blue check mark, and we're like, wait, what about me?
Yeah.
And so we strive for this blue check mark, or we strive to like meet these people. But in all reality, like, what if we just embraced who we are, embraced our influence, embraced our purpose? And so it's like giving also people like, ordinary freaks, same heartbeat, man, giving the nameless and the faceless a voice to share their perspectives, because people are amazing. Their minds are amazing. Their hearts are incredible. And so I think it's going to be something that is channeling that. And then what I would love to do is eventually, because I love leadership, I love reading about it, love learning it, love listening to it, love investing my time into it, is I would love to eventually teach and talk about how to develop leaders. And so I got some things in the works for that.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Yeah, and I love writing. I love writing. So I want to write 13 books in my lifetime. I don't know why I chose 13, but that's my thing. I just pushed one with my boy MJ. It's called The Purposeful Generation. We're trying to raise funds for it. It's basically how to live purposeful for this generation when we live vertical. It's a pretty cool book. It's basically 10 practical steps that we need in this life to like grow. Obedience, so key, but how many times if we like obey in our life, like we can see some like amazing things. Everyone mentors someone and everyone is a mentee at some point.
Yeah.
So if we learn just how to use obeying as an avenue to grow in our leadership, it's could be super key. Basically, it's we're dedicating the book to FaceTime. We wrote the whole book via FaceTime. So he lives out in Connecticut. We spent like 2 years in advance texting and talking about like the things that we want to implement in this book. Wrote them all down. So while we have amazing content for the inside, we also have our text threads on the outside, so people can get a play-by-play. Like I talked earlier, we want the product, we want the perfection, all this stuff. But what we don't know is all the things,
The process,
all the time, the process. Yeah, man.
Right.
That it took to get to this point. And so that's what our book does. It literally is a play-by-play process. And then you'll have something in your hand that you can actually get my behind the scenes, MJ's behind the scenes, and then how we learned from it. to give you life lessons, give this world life lessons to grow as a person.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Cool.
Still got a lot on your plate.
Yeah, man,
that's
totally.
crazy.
I love I eventually want to become a pastor and like teach and talk
Mentor.
and like pastor and mentor and love people, man. So that's like what I'm putting my hand to right now. But I would say like, if you can get anything from this podcast, like whoever's listening out there, whoever is like trying to learn or try to grow, I would say spend a couple of months and invest yourself into some leadership books. Like period. Like just grow in your learning and then use the language within the books as your common language. And I think it will become something that's super unfamiliar and you may be like, this is kind of like different. But I think when you use the language within the book of someone that's like writing stuff, it grows like who you are. Just like if you read growing up, you know, you were terrible reading.
Yeah.
A terrible reader when you in first grade or whenever you learned reading, you know. But by come high school, you know, college, like you can read a book in XYZ amount of time, you know. And so I think that's what leadership does. It grows your capacity for something even greater. So it's like, it may stink, it may suck, it may be like, dude, I have to give more time to something, but you have to sacrifice. You have to get this point of sacrifice. I'm going to sacrifice, because when you sacrifice, you go up. When you sacrifice more, you stay up. And so everything comes down to sacrifice. This moment right here, for you guys, it's a time of sacrifice. You're hoping for something that's beyond a star that you don't even know yet. You're praying that this launches into something awesome, right? But you don't even know if it will. But because you sacrifice the time right now for me, and I sacrifice the time for you, before you know it, you link with people and watch your leadership lid grow.
No, I'm glad you we're not done. I was gonna say finish up, but I'm glad you mentioned that. So before we head over to the segment question, is there anything you would like to add that you forgot to mention or something top of your head?
Man, what I would like to add, I would say learn how, and I kind of already mentioned it a little bit, but learn how to not become a critic. This world is full of criticism. Look at the news. Like, all the news does, it gets the coolest, biggest story and posts it. But what the news doesn't even understand, it's literally like your lives are getting at stake because the news channels bad news. It's so dumb. It's literally so dumb. And so I think for me, what I would say is super key in this life is be a person that empowers. Be someone that believes in someone. Like, be someone that gives encouragement. Like, we don't need people that are going to criticize. We need people that look at people through a lens of like greatness, of good, of potential, belief, empowerment, encouragement. Because if all you are a critic, I guarantee you, I could probably come into your life and be like, that is why you have no influence. That's why you're a bump on a log, is because literally you sit and criticize people. You know, let me retract. I think there's two types of people in this world, literally. There's people that will empower you to become the best you. And they just believe in you because why? There's this thing called love. And this world needs love. They need genuine love that I think is found in the Father's heartbeat. And then there's someone out there that will, they may know you and they may care about you, but all they want to do is hold you back to the place of where you were. When you're trying to go here, they just want to hold you here. And it's like, man, like, why can't you support and encourage and empower and like believe in me, you know? Where we have all these people that like don't celebrate. Don't celebrate you and don't celebrate what you're putting your mind to or your heart to. Did you guys get criticized at all by, or any naysayers out there, you know, trying to launch this podcast?
I mean, I'm sure there was some that were like, what are they doing?
Or, from a social media standpoint, the people will be sitting on the other side of this being criticizing like my thoughts or my heart or my mind. And it's like, wait, why can't we just be open to the possibility of receiving something that we don't know? Just because your thoughts are your thoughts doesn't mean they're right. So I would say like that is like something that I'm passionate about, man, is being someone that believes and encourages and sees people as like, that they're going to be something. So my thing is like, be someone that believes in others. I think the greatest leaders in this life, the reason why they're so great is because literally they saw people as potential. They said, I'm not going to be the lid to your leadership. I'm going to try to have you surpass mine.
Yeah.
That's a great leader.
Cool.
So, yeah, man.
So moving on to the questions. First question I would like to ask you is, what advice would you give to someone, for example, in their senior year of high school or college, and they don't know what their next move should be? They're stuck and they don't know what they should be doing next. What would you advise them?
My first thing I would say would, and some people would be like, what? Is like, pray about it. I know it sounds so weird, but for me, you can't launch into something unless you have the capacity to know what's about to come. In other words, I think we're surrounded by options in our generation, being a YouTube person that's famous on YouTube, being a lead singer, like being an artist, being a great photographer. And there's all these people that are straight up sharks, and they're amazing and they're so gifted, but you're a minnow. And you have to understand that if you're a minnow, get ready for the Shark Tank, because when you grow, you're about to launch closer and get closer to those sharks. And you have to know that even if you start as a minnow, that you can be a shark at your calling. You can be a shark at like the thing that you put your hand to. So my thing is like, pray about it, and then like prepare for sharks. Prepare to be a shark. Prepare to be the greatest, prepare yourself for the capacity of like leading. So that would be my biggest advice, is prepare for the Shark Tank. Prepare to get eaten alive.
Cool.
But know that like you can do great things as long as you put your mind to it, your heart to it. So
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's the best advice you've gotten, and who has given you that advice?
best advice I've ever learned, it comes, I think, from the heart of my dad. He said, always live with your eyes like wide awake, wide open, because there's so many things that you can learn. I think he told me that because you can learn so much from life just by watching, and you can just be such a catalyst to hope when you just go to the people that are hurting or broken or need some hope. Or, I want to be known as someone that like I want my dreams to be God dreams, but I want God's dreams in my life to be so big that people fulfill their dreams within mine. Because my dream with God is like, God says in Ephesians 3:20 that I will do above and beyond what you ever ask, think, or imagine. Ask, think, or imagine. We can imagine some great things, but if God can do above and beyond that, like, I'm about to buckle up, because if God is going to exceed that, man, I'm about to ride in that lane all the time, because I think I'm going to grow in that. So I'm going to grow in that, but that perspective is leaning into Ephesians 3:20 for my life, leaning into seeing this world with open eyes.
If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and where would you take them?
Actually, everyone that knows me probably knows my answer already to this. True story, Carl Lentz. He helped me through a broken season. There's times that sat on couches weeping to his sermons, and just because God is just using him in such a great way in my life. And so if I could sit down with one person and just thank them, and true story, this is hilarious. A couple months back, I actually drove out to New York City to pound on his door, and I pounded on his door and you know, I found out where he lived, and this lady came to the door and she was like, Carl Lentz does not live here. He just moved last month. And I was so salty because I just drove 15 hours from Wisconsin to New York City throughout the whole night to get there to try to I try to hand deliver a 6-page note thanking Carl Lentz for like his impact in my life. So if I could just sit down with one person and just like thank them and just like shake his hand and just be like, dude, you've changed my life. Mm-hmm. The words you use and like what God has done in your life has literally increased who I am. Like it's in such an amazing way. So if I could sit down with anyone, it'd be C. Lentz to the T, man. Like that dude is OG status. Dude is like so gifted.
Where would you take him to eat?
If I could take him to eat, I would definitely bring him to Milwaukee. I'd have him preach at our church, Cornerstone MKE. And I'd probably take him out to Fuel Cafe on 5th Street.
Nice.
Shout out to Fuel.
Shout out to Fuel and Collectivo.
All right, man. Well, before I ask you the last questions, I would like to personally thank you for being here. You're such an inspiring guy. You got me all fired up.
Dude, come on. Put that passion in his place.
But the last question, we asked this to everybody that steps in here and, you know, obviously shares their wisdom on a scale from 1 to 10. How weird are you? How much of a freak are you, and why?
I'm so weird, bro. I would say I'm 10 out of 10. I'm OG freak status. I would say sometimes I don't even know who I am. True story. I would say like anyone that knows me knows that I'm an Enneagram number 3 with a wing of 2. So I like try to take on everyone's like I try to help everyone, and then I try to mold to like the environment, like a iguana, you know. So I would say I'm like OG 10 out of 10, bro. But sometimes you gotta be a freak, bro. You gotta get that tenacious freak style out, because I think some of the biggest freaks can be the biggest world changers. So I'm definitely a freak, bro. For sure.
Dope, man.
Before we wrap up, man, can you let the people know where they can find you?
Yeah, my name is Aaron Barnett. You can find me at the.ab on Instagram. True story, I just love Instagram. It's just my avenue of social media, really, that I just put my hand to, or Aaron Barnett on Facebook. You can call me anytime. If you need hope, need purpose spoken into you, call me 262-527-9447. Shoot me an email at aaron.r.barnett@gmail.com. I always will make time for you. It may be a little bit before I respond, but I promise, like, if you want any wisdom, anytime you want to sit down, like hang out, grab coffee, meet up, come have me speak or teach or do anything, like hit me up. Like, I'm here for people. So I'm here for others. So
dope, man. Thank you. Definitely wasn't expecting to get any numbers tonight.
You can bleep that out on the podcast.
No, man.
But I just want to say shout out to you guys. Like, super thankful for who you guys are. Your lives speak loud behind the scenes. So just like keep crushing it. Keep being who you guys are. So
thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate your time. Eddie, thank you.
Thank you, B.
Thank you, Ordinary Freaks, for tuning in to another podcast. Peace.
Peace.